Across the vast expanse of time, mythologies have forged the world. From the depths of chaos to the flames of distant realms, every culture has woven tales of gods, heroes, and celestial wonders. Welcome to Myth to Myth, your mythological portal. Subscribe for more epic journeys. Visit mythtomyth.com and discover all our products. The world has been washed once already. The waters that once devoured cities have returned to their banks, and under the quiet gaze of Zeus Physios, the god of those who seek refuge, men plow new furrows into a patient earth. Yet if the soil has been cleansed, the heart of humankind is still unwritten, waiting for the first names that will carve themselves into stone, blood, and starfire. A low choir rises. Deep drums mark the slow tread of fate. Over them, strings unfurl like dawn over the ridges of Hellas, and a single flute threads through, clear as an oracle's first breath. For a moment, we see the arc of Deucalion and Pyrrha receding into memory, the oak of Dodona whispering Physios into the sky. Then the music narrows like an eye focusing, and the muses begin to sing of lineage. Look back, they say, to Io, horned wanderer stung across the earth by a goddess's jealousy. Some singers will say she crossed by other roads, resting in other shrines, but our song follows the path where her tears fell into Nile waters and where Epiphus, her son, first raised cities in the lands of Egypt. From Epiphus comes Belos, and from Belos, twin brothers and branching fates, until one branch reaches Danaus, who brings his troubled house back across the sea to Argos. From Danaus, the line passes through Lynceus and Abas, until it narrows to the twin kings Proetus and Acrisius, and from Acrisius the thread tightens further still. So the line coils: Io, Epaphus, Belos, Danaus, Lynceus, Abas, Acrisius, Danae, Perseus. Upon that throne sits Acrisius, king of Argos, heir to wanderers, ruling in a world rebuilt by flood survivors. The muses glide above his city like circling birds, drawing a last bright line, from Danaus through Lynceus and Abas to Acrisius, from Acrisius to Danae, from Danae to Perseus. The age of the gods has not ended, but a new age begins beneath it, the age of heroes, and it will open with a man who dares to chain a prophecy from Delphi and hurl his own blood into the sea, hoping that destiny can drown. The drums fall to a heartbeat, the choir leans into a rising chord, and the muses turn their gaze fully toward Argos. The muses' last whisper falls over Argos. The first great name of the age waits beneath a prophecy. The tale begins now. Stone remembers what flesh forgets. In the great hall of Argos, torches hiss against the carved reliefs of Io, of Epaphus, of Belos and Danaus, each name biting into the walls like a wound that never fully closed. Brass braziers burn low, smoke coils upward, darkening the faces of heroes and wanderers whose stories once crossed seas and deserts. Beneath their gaze sits Acrisius, king of Argos, his cloak heavy with age, and with the weight of so many eyes upon his back. Around him, counselors murmur in low voices, choosing their words as carefully as they would choose steps on the edge of a cliff. There is still no sun, one ventures, glancing aside at the panels where Io flees in the shape of a cow, where Epaphus raises his hands over Nile waters. The house of Danaus is broad, my king, but your own branch is thin. Another speaks of nephews and cousins, of the twin brother Proetus who once contended for this very throne, of lines that might claim Argos if the king's own line fails. The names swarm around Acrisius like flies around a sacrificial altar. Acrisius fixes his eyes on the figure of Danaus, chiseled mid-journey, as he led his daughters back to Argive soil. He thinks of journeys, of exile, of the way a single decision in one generation becomes law for 10. The hall feels colder than the stone should allow. No laughter echoes here today. No children's feet slap against the polished floor. Only the crackle of fire and the whisper of robes remind him that time is moving and that the silence of his house is growing louder. Above, unseen by the mortals, The muses glide along the rafters like pale birds, counting the generations from Io to Epiphus to Belos to Danaus to Acrisius, and they know that the line is about to be tested by a voice that does not dwell in any mortal hall. The road to Delphi clings to the side of the mountain like a stubborn vine. Acrisius climbs it with a small retinue, cloak drawn tight against the wind that smells of pine resin and cold stone. Hooves clatter on the narrow path. From below comes the distant murmur of other pilgrims, each carrying their own fears up toward the sacred height. The sky above Parnassus is a pale dome, streaked with the white breath of clouds, as if the mountain itself were exhaling prayers. There are other shrines in Hellas, other stones that speak, but the story that endures brings him here to the navel of the world, where Apollo lets his voice rise through a woman's lungs. The closer he comes, the thicker the smoke of sacrifice becomes, curling from bronze tripods clinging to wool and to hair. The air tastes of laurel and burnt fat, of hopes offered up in exchange for slivers of knowledge. Inside the temple, shadows flicker over painted scenes of god and mortal. Acrisius kneels, sets his offering down, and waits as the Pythia mounts her tripod above the unseen cleft in the rock. Her hair is bound with laurel, her eyes half closed. The god is already near. A low murmur begins in her throat, rising and falling like the first stir of distant thunder. Then, with a shudder, the words come, thin at first, but slicing straight through him. "You will have no son," the god says through her. "Your daughter Danae will bear a child. That child, your daughter's son, will be the hand that ends your life." The torches seem to dim. Acrisius feels the pulse in his throat, a drumbeat suddenly too loud. He had come to ask how to secure his line. He leaves knowing only that the line itself has turned against him. Outside, pilgrims chatter and trade rumors, but their voices wash past him like rain off polished marble. The only sound that remains is the echo of Apollo's sentence, following him down the mountain step by measured step. Argos receives its king with trumpets and banners, but Acrisius barely sees them. The city's streets, the market stalls, even the shrines he passes seem thinner, drained of their color by the prophecy that beats behind his eyes. In the palace, servants fuss with his cloak, bringing wine and water, but he waves them away and summons the master smiths who have forged spears, chariots, and gates for his house. "We will build a chamber," he says, voice steady but stripped of warmth. "Not of stone which can crack, not of wood which can burn. A chamber of bronze beneath the earth, sealed on all sides. No window, no door save one, guarded by men whose loyalty is to me alone." The artisans exchange uneasy glances. One asks with proper humility, who is to be kept within such a prison? "My daughter," Acrisius replies. The word tastes bitter. "There are suitors unworthy of her. There are plots I would cut off before they sprout. I will keep her from all men." The reason is half truth and half lie, and in his own mind the king knows it. Some rulers, hearing such a prophecy, would take up the sword and strike down their child, staining the floor with kin blood. Acrisius flinches from that path, not because mercy fills his heart, but because he fears the wrath of Zeus and the disgust of every altar in Hellas. So he chooses a cruelty that wears the mask of protection. When Danae is summoned, she finds a father whose eyes do not quite meet hers. He speaks of safety, of honor, of preserving her from greedy hands. She hears concern in his words, but also hears the clang of invisible chains. Still, she obeys, because duty has been hammered into her since childhood, and because she does not yet know that Apollo's sentence has already begun to reshape her life into a narrow corridor with no door but one. The chamber is born first as sound. For days, the palace and the lower city shake with the pounding of hammers on molten bronze, with the hiss of quenching metal, with the groan of wheels dragging heavy sheets toward the chosen patch of earth. Children press to the edges of the worksite, shooed away by overseers, their eyes wide as they watch the underworld being built above ground. Then the ground is opened, a deep squared wound cut into the flesh of Argos. Within it rises the bronze room, 4 gleaming walls fitted so tightly together that not even a blade of grass could slip between them, a ceiling that reflects the sun like a still pond, a single entrance framed in iron. The inside shimmers with captured daylight, but when the door shuts, all that brightness will sink into a dim, perpetual twilight. Danae stands at the threshold, a few belongings gathered in her hands. A folded cloak, a comb of carved bone, a small terracotta figure of a goddess her nurse once gave her. Behind her, palace servants avert their eyes, uncomfortable with the thought of a noble daughter being buried alive in metal. Ahead of her, the chamber waits, silent and hungry. Acrisius offers a final word about honor and safety, about how this is only until the gods grant him clarity. His voice rings off the bronze and comes back to him thinner, hollow. Danae steps inside. The air is cooler, tinged with the scent of new metal. As she turns, the door swings on heavy hinges. The sound is a long, grinding moan that seems to go on forever. When it slams home, the echo rolls through the earth like distant thunder. Far above, the sky is wide and clean. The flood of Deucalion is now only a story told in marketplaces and beside hearths, how the world was once drowned and raised again. Yet here, under the palace of Argos, a single woman enters a private flood of darkness, sealed away not by divine waters, but by the fear of a mortal king. Time passes strangely in bronze. Days blur into one another for Danae, measured only by the trays of food slid in by silent guards, by the slow dimming and brightening of the light that seeps through the tiny seams where ceiling meets wall. Sometimes she sings, her voice trembling against metal. Sometimes she presses her palm to the cold surface and imagines she can feel the city's heartbeat on the other side. Then, after uncounted days in the bronze gloom, one night the air changes. The chamber is utterly dark, yet she feels a pressure, a weighting, as if the room itself were holding its breath. A faint glow appears at the edges of the ceiling, at first no more than a thin line, as though someone had traced fire along the joints. It brightens, deepens, shifts from white to honey to molten amber. Danae's eyes widen. She backs against the far wall, torn between awe and terror. From the glowing seam, something begins to fall, not water, though it moves like a shower. Each droplet is a bead of light, a fragment of gold that is not metal, but pure radiance, pouring down in a soft, shimmering cascade. It does not hiss when it touches the bronze floor. Instead, it spreads like fog made of sunlight, swirling around her ankles, rising to her knees, her breast, her face. The air hums with a low vibration, like a plucked string that never stops singing. Outside, over Argos, distant thunder rolls, though no storm has gathered. One ancient account names Brutus as Danae's seducer. The Muses follow the other tradition plainly. This is Zeus not in a man's shape, but as a stream of gold descending through bronze and enveloping her in divine radiance. Danae closes her eyes as the light washes over her. She feels no hand, hears no word, yet something settles into her like a seed dropped into fertile ground. When the radiance finally fades and the chamber returns to its familiar dimness, she is left trembling, alone and profoundly changed, as if the metal around her is no longer the only thing that has been remade. The chamber that was meant to halt a line becomes the place where that line twists and continues. Weeks pass. Danae's body begins to change, the way earth swells before the first green blade pierces the soil. She presses her hand to her belly, half in fear, half in wonder, whispering to the unseen father whose sign had been gold instead of flesh. Labor comes on a night when the air feels heavier than usual, the bronze walls sweating with a thin sheen of condensation. Danae's cries echo harshly in the confined space, bouncing back on her in waves. There is no midwife, no mother, no chorus of women to guide her, only her own strength and whatever mercy the gods choose to lend. She grips the edges of the simple bed, of the table, of the wall itself, leaving sweat-darkened prints that gleam faintly in the half-light. At last, with a final, ragged cry, the child slips into the world. His first breath becomes a shout that ricochets off every surface, filling the chamber with sound so loud it feels like a storm trapped in a jar. Danaë gathers the newborn against her chest, tears streaking her face, laughter and sobbing mingled. She names him Perseus, though in this moment he is not yet a hero, only a warm weight with a fierce, insistent voice. Above them in the palace corridors, servants pause. "Did you hear that?" one asks, frowning. Another nods, saying it sounded like thunder underground. The rumor runs upward through the household until it reaches Acrisius. When he descends, escorted by guards carrying torches, the air in the stairway feels oddly charged. He hears the muffled wail before the door is opened. For an instant he hopes it is some trick of the echo. Then the bolts slide back, bronze grinds on stone, and the door swings wide to reveal Danae, exhausted but radiant, with the child at her breast. The king's face drains of color. The prophecy from Delphi has grown lungs and a heartbeat. The god's words, once mere sound, now stare back at him with newborn eyes. The door slams shut again. Acrisius turns away from the sight of his daughter and her child, as if from a blazing forge, afraid his resolve will melt if he looks too long. In the corridor, his captains and counselors wait in a tight knot. They can see in his expression that something irrevocable has happened. "She claims Zeus is the father," he says flatly. The words do not comfort him. Zeus has many children, and not all of them bring blessing to the houses where they are born. The prophecy from Delphi claws at his throat. "Your daughter's son will be your death." One counselor, bolder than the rest, suggests the simplest, darkest answer, that the child could be killed quietly, the body hidden, the deed whispered only to a select few. The thought alone makes Acrisius feel as though the roof will cave in on him. To spill his own blood in defiance of a god's supposed claim would be to invite thunder upon his head while he still breathes. Another proposes exile for Danae alone, separating seed from soil. But Acrisius knows too well how stories cling to land and lineage. A grandson raised in secret could still return one day with a sword and a grudge. He chooses a different cruelty. "We will trust the sea," he says at last. "If Zeus truly favors them, let him prove it." Carpenters are summoned. A wooden chest is ordered, stout planks, iron-banded, seams tarred against the waves. While it is built, Danae is told nothing. She cradles Perseus, tracing the lines of his tiny hands, singing lullabies that tremble at the edges whenever she imagines what her father might do. When the chest is ready, guards descend to the bronze chamber. Danae is given a moment only to gather a thin blanket and the child. Her protests echo helplessly as she is ushered up into the cold air of the palace courtyard, where servants have gathered in uneasy silence. The act is harder than any softened memory. She is placed in the chest with her son, the lid closed over her cry, nails pounding like war drums as they seal them in darkness. At the shore, the people of Argos watch from a distance as the chest is borne to the edge of the foam. Acrisius stands apart, jaw clenched, refusing to meet Danae's gaze, even in memory. With a final shove, the chest is launched. It bobs once, twice, then is taken by the swell, drifting out into the grey-blue vastness of the Aegean. The king tells himself he has not killed his kin, he has merely let the gods decide. But as the chest grows smaller against the glittering skin of the sea, the line of Danaus and Io, Epiphus and Belos hangs by a thread of wood and wave, and the prophecy does not weaken, it only waits. The chest rises and falls like a second heart against the chest of the sea. Around it, the Aegean stretches in every direction, a shifting skin of grey-blue that still remembers, in its deepest places, the roar of the flood that once drowned mountains. Waves slap against the wooden sides, spraying foam that dries in white scars along the planks. Each impact rattles the cramped darkness within, rocking Danae and the infant Perseus in a cradle carved by fear. Inside, Danae clings to her child, feeling every lurch as a question. Will the next blow break the wood? Will the next swell swallow them whole? There are moments when the sea seems eager to do exactly that. Dark clouds gather without warning, wind knifes across the surface, and the chest is hurled up and down like a toy, its iron bands groaning. Thunder mutters far away, as if some old quarrel between sky and water has flared again. Yet between these fits of fury come silences so deep, they feel deliberate. The wind falls, the waves smooth into long, gentle swells that lift the chest as softly as a nurse lifting a child from the ground. In those lulls, moonlight paints a pale road over the water, and the chest slides along it, as if guided by an unseen hand. Once, long ago, Zeus unleashed the waters to erase an age of men. Now, as Zeus Phyxios, protector of those who seek shelter, he guides a single chest across that same sea. It moves as carefully as if it were an offering on a god's own palm. The ocean holds its breath, and somewhere beyond the horizon, an island waits that has never yet heard the name Perseus. Dawn drags itself over the rim of the sea, staining the clouds with faint rose and dull gold. On the rocky shore of Seriphos, where coarse sand gives way to jagged stones and tide pools, a man works his nets alone. Dictys, brother of the island's king, has risen earlier than the rest of the fishing village. His boat is already drawn up, its belly emptied of the night's catch. Now he walks the line where waves collapse in size, scanning for driftwood, for lost pots, for anything the sea has decided to return. Something heavy bumps against a half-submerged rock with a hollow thud. Dictys turns. The object is too regular to be a log, too square to be a natural stone. As the next wave recedes, he sees the edges of a wooden chest, sea-soaked, banded in iron, tar oozing from its seams like old blood. He calls out once, twice, but no one answers. The other fishers are still at sea. Alone, he wades into the surf, muscles straining as he levers the chest free and drags it onto the shingle. Up close, he hears something, a faint muffled sound somewhere between a sob and a whimper. His heart stutters. Chests that groan are rarely empty. Kneeling, he works at the swollen lid, prying at the iron bands until one gives with a shriek. The lid bursts open, and the smell of salt and stale air rushes out. Inside, tangled in a cloak, lies a young woman with hair matted to her cheeks and a baby pressed tight against her breast. Her eyes blink against the sudden light. The child squalls, outraged at the intrusion of the sky. For an instant, Dictys simply stares. In the stories old sailors tell by dying fires, the sea brings wreckage, bones, strange fish, but rarely living souls. By the gods, he breathes, making an old averting gesture. Danae clutches the baby, wild-eyed. Please, she whispers, voice ragged from days of thirst and fear, if you have any kindness in you, help us. Dictys sees no rank, no politics, only a mother and child who have survived what should have killed them. In his mind, it is already decided. The sea has delivered them to his hands, and that makes them a kind of offering. Then you are helped, he says gently, offering his hand. This is Seriphos. While I have bread and a roof, you will not drown. Seriphos is no great kingdom. It is stone and wind, a scatter of houses clinging to the earth above a small harbor, a low palace that seems almost ashamed to call itself such. But to Danae, after the bronze tomb and the blind heave of the sea, it is a world that breathes. Time gathers itself into small, repeating rituals. By dawn, Dictys is at the shore, his net slung over his shoulder. Often a boy runs alongside him, legs still a little unsteady but growing stronger every year, peppering him with questions about currents, fish, and distant islands. This is Perseus, who learns to read the moods of the water as other boys read letters, who can tell by the tilt of a gull's flight whether the shoals are full or empty. Salt whitens his hair at the tips, sun darkens his skin. When he laughs at the spray, Danae hears an echo of thunder and tries not to think about it. She keeps house in Dictys's modest dwelling, grinding grain, mending nets, offering wine at the small household altar. The villagers first whisper about the strange woman and her child pulled from a chest, but her quiet diligence and modesty blunt their suspicion. In time, she is simply Danaë, the foreigner who works hard and smiles rarely, whose eyes still sometimes search the horizon as if expecting a ship that will never come. Above the village, the palace of King Polydectes squats on a rocky rise, its banners frayed by constant wind. From its high windows, the king and his servants can look down on harbor and huts alike. Polydectes hears of the beautiful stranger and the boy taken in by his brother. At first, it is a story told over wine, amusing as any other gossip on a small island. But as years pass and Perseus grows into a broad-shouldered youth, as Danae's features sharpen into a worn but unmistakable grace, the story takes root in his mind in a different way. When he rides down through the village with his small escort, villagers bow. Perseus straightens from his work, wiping fish scales from his hands, and meets the king's gaze without quite lowering his own. The moment is brief, but it lodges like a splinter in Polydectes' pride. Dictys, watching from the doorway, feels a flicker of unease as the king's gaze lingers a little too long on Danae, then shifts back to the boy who calls her mother. The sea's salt is in the air, but something else begins to accumulate as well. A tension fine as spider silk, stretching between the humble house of the fisherman and the palace above. One evening, when the sky bleeds into violet and the harbor lights prick on like scattered stars, a messenger from the palace comes to Dictys' door. He bows and announces that King Polydectes wishes to receive Danae in his hall. The words are dressed in courtesy, wishes, honor, guest. But Danae feels the old familiar chill of compulsion ripple through her. Dictys hesitates. "You need not go if you fear him," he murmurs, but she has lived too long under the moods of kings to think simple refusal will keep danger away. "If I do not go," she answers quietly, "it will be worse for you and for Perseus." So she wraps herself in her best, though still modest garments, and climbs the path to the palace as the wind tugs at her cloak. Inside, the hall is warmed by braziers and thick with the scent of roasted meat. Polydectes lounges on his chair, a man grown soft on power in a hard land. His smile as she approaches is wide, but does not reach his eyes. He speaks of gratitude, how fortunate his brother was to be honored by such unexpected guests from the sea, how kindly the island has treated her, how alone she must sometimes feel. His words coil politely around a single point. He could make her life easier. He could raise her to a place of comfort, away from fish guts and rough cloth, if only she would accept his protection. Danae listens, hands folded, shoulders squared. She has seen this dance before in other halls with other men who believed their favor was a gift no one could refuse. When he suggests with a chuckle that is just a little too sharp, that a woman like her deserves a man who can truly guard her from misfortune, she answers in a voice that does not tremble. She speaks of the honor of Dictys, who took her in when she had nothing, of her devotion to the boy who is her only true wealth, of her desire to remain as she is. For a heartbeat, the hall is very still. Polydectes' smile cools. In that thin silence, something hardens between them. He dismisses her with smooth phrases, but his eyes, as she turns to go, flicker with wounded pride and calculation. That night, as Perseus sleeps on a pallet warmed by the sea breeze, Polydectes sits in his chair and stares into the dark. In his mind, the foreign woman and her son are no longer merely the sea's strange gift to his brother. They are a challenge to his authority, a beauty that has refused him, and a young man whose presence in his island grows larger with every season. The laws of Xenia, of guest friendship, are meant to protect such people. Polydectes begins to consider how he might twist those laws into a weapon, and how a king might rid himself of a guest without ever lifting a sword. On an island where the main feast of the year is often nothing more than a larger fish and a slightly better wine, the announcement of a grand wedding sends talk racing from door to door. King Polydectes declares that he is gathering gifts for the wedding of Hippodamia, daughter of Oenomaus, a bride of great renown, and that every man of standing on Seriphos is invited to a banquet in her honor. The palace hall is dressed as richly as the island allows. Fresh rushes cover the floor, garlands of seagrass and hardy flowers droop from the pillars. Oil lamps burn brighter than usual, drawing moths into their small orbits of light. Men arrive in their best cloaks, bearing gifts, a finely worked goblet, a bolt of dyed cloth, a necklace of polished shell. The murmur of voices fills the hall, thick with curiosity. Among the guests stands Perseus, taller now than many men in the room, but still in his own mind the boy who mended nets. His tunic is plain, his hands are calloused. He has nothing to bring but himself. At his side, Dictys shifts uneasily, aware that kings do not summon fishermen's households without purpose. Danae, kept away this night, waits at home with a prayer half spoken on her lips. Polydectes rises, arms spread in welcome, and speaks at length of generosity, of celebration, of how each man must prove his respect by offering a fitting gift. He hints that fine horses would be the most fitting tribute for so splendid a wedding, though any costly treasure will do for those who cannot spare such steeds. Laughter ripples through the hall as wealthy islanders boast of their offerings, each trying to outdo the last. At last, the king's gaze settles on Perseus. "And you," he says with a silk-edged chuckle, "brave son of Danae, what treasure will you lay at my feet?" Color rises in Perseus's face. He has nothing, no gold, no fine weapon, no carved bowl. Pride and youth meet in his chest like flint and steel. "If I had riches, I would lay them here," he answers, voice ringing a little too loudly. "But I have my hands, my courage, and my oath. Ask for anything, even..." He gropes for something impossible, something that will prove the depth of his resolve. "Even the head of the Gorgon Medusa. If that would please you, I would bring it." A hush falls, then a murmur like wind through thorns. The name Medusa crawls around the room. Some touch their amulets or make warding signs, while others scoff. Polydectes' smile sharpens in the quiet, like a blade catching lamplight. The promise hangs there, extravagant and absurd, but it is a thread he has been waiting to grasp. The prophecy has crossed bronze, darkness, and sea without losing its course. Acrisius buried his daughter beneath Argos, but gold entered the chamber. He sealed mother and child inside a wooden chest, but the waves carried them to Seriphos. There, beneath the roof of a fisherman, the infant marked for death grew into a young man who knows nets, wind, salt, and the quiet honor of those who offer shelter before asking a stranger's name. But refuge has drawn the gaze of another king. Polydectes has seen Danae refuse the comfort he calls protection. He has seen Perseus stand upright where other islanders lower their eyes. Unable to strike openly without violating the sacred law of guests, he prepares a snare from courtesy, celebration, and pride. The lamps of the false wedding burn over gifts Perseus cannot match. Fine cloth, worked vessels, and promises of horses gather before the throne. The fisherman's son stands among them with empty hands, carrying only courage and the fierce need not to appear small before the king who threatens his mother. Then the impossible name is spoken, Medusa. For a breath, the banquet hall becomes still. Some men reach for amulets, others stare at the youth who has offered what no mortal should seek. Across the room, Polydectes does not need to invent the weapon any longer. Perseus has placed it in his hand. The feast will end, the garlands will wither, but the promise will remain waiting for morning when a king will call pride an oath and send the son of Danae toward the edge of the world. Subscribe for more epic journeys. Visit myth2myth.com and discover all our products.